What happens when the guy who signs your paycheck stands in front of you mopping floors and you lie straight to his face? Landon James stood outside the cafe, staring through the glass at a girl steaming milk too fast and a lanky guy behind the counter wiping his nose with the back of his hand. It was store number 14 out of 18. His father had built the cafe chain from scratch, and Landon had inherited it 3 years ago. He'd worked hard to grow it, opening new stores, hiring district managers, and improving operations, but lately, something felt off. The complaints weren't huge, nothing major like lawsuits or walkouts, but they were growing: wrong orders, cold food, rude staff. Reviews online started dipping. He read one that said, "Staff lied about ingredients, I'm allergic to dairy, not funny." That one stuck. But no one could ever give him clear answers. District managers blamed store managers. Store managers blamed new hires. Everyone pointed fingers, and that's when Landon had enough. He called in a favor from a Hollywood friend and got a full disguise. Shaggy brown wig, light stubble beard, fake glasses, and a slight southern accent he'd practiced in the mirror for a week. He made up a name, Kyle. Said he just moved to the city, needed a job, and had barista experience. The manager of Store 14, Curtis, hired him on the spot. Landon had never met Curtis personally. He rarely got involved in hiring unless it was for upper management. With 18 locations and over 200 employees, most of them didn't recognize his face. The plan was simple: work at the cafe for a few days, blend in, and see what was really going on. His first day started with a cold mop bucket. "Yo, Kyle," Curtis barked from behind the pastry case, "you're on floors and trash. Then maybe we'll let you near the espresso machine." Landon nodded. "All good, boss." He mopped quietly, observing. The cafe was understaffed, only 3 people on shift: Curtis, a cashier named Olivia, and a teenage dishwasher named Eric. Landon could feel the tension already. Curtis barely spoke to Eric except to yell. Olivia kept her head down, working through a line of customers with robotic movements. Around 10:30, a woman came in holding a toddler. Olivia greeted her with a tired smile. "Hi there, welcome. What can I get you?" "Just a decaf oat milk latte, please. I'm allergic to dairy," the woman said. Landon froze. Curtis leaned over Olivia's shoulder. "We're out of oat milk. Just use the 2%. She won't know the difference." Olivia stiffened. "She said she's allergic." Curtis rolled his eyes. "It's like a splash. You want me to dump another carton of oat milk for 1 cup? That stuff's expensive. Just lie if you have to. We're not made of money." Landon didn't move. He stood there gripping the mop, heart thudding. "I am not comfortable with that," Olivia said quietly. Curtis stepped closer. "Then I'll make it myself." He took the cup, poured the espresso, steamed the 2% milk, and handed it off. "There you go, ma'am. 1 oat milk latte." The woman smiled and walked off. Olivia stared at her shoes. Eric stopped stacking dishes and looked away. Landon gritted his teeth. He wanted to throw off the wig and call Curtis out right then and there. But he didn't. Not yet. He needed to see more. Later that day, while throwing out trash, Landon found a box of expired pastries hidden behind the dumpster. Mold on the edges. When he brought it up, Curtis laughed. "Sell-by dates are suggestions. We rotate 'em. Heat 'em up, they're fine." By day's end, Landon was mentally exhausted. He sat at the bus stop down the block, still in disguise, phone in his hand but not looking at it. He thought of his dad. The man had built this company to be honest, kind, community-based. And here, his own manager was lying to customers about ingredients to save $1. He didn't sleep much that night. Tomorrow, he'd learn more. Watch closer. But he already knew this wasn't going to end quietly. Landon showed up early the next morning. Not because he had to. His shift didn't start for another 30 minutes, but because he couldn't stop thinking about the woman with the dairy allergy. The cup in her hand, the toddler tugging at her coat. What if she'd had a reaction? What if the kid had taken a sip? He pushed the door open and stepped into the cafe just as the lights were flickering on. The place smelled like burnt beans. Curtis stood behind the counter, sipping from a paper cup with one hand and scrolling through something on his phone with the other. "You sleep here or something?" Curtis didn't look up. Figured I'd get a head start, Landon said, heading to the back. Don't get used to it. We're not paying you to hang around. Landon ignored the jab and headed into the storage room. A box of coffee filters had collapsed under a stack of syrups. He bent and started restacking everything, checking labels as he went. Half the caramel bottles were past sell-by. He didn't touch them, just noted them mentally. At 7 sharp, Olivia walked in, hair pulled back tighter than yesterday, hoodie zipped up to her chin. She didn't say much, just tied on her apron and went to prep the pastry case. Landon wanted to ask how long things had been like this, but timing mattered. Eric showed 30 minutes later, sweaty and out of breath. I ran here, he muttered, brushing crumbs off his shirt. Bus driver didn't stop. Curtis stepped out of the office, leaned against the doorframe. I don't care if you had to crawl here on broken glass, kid. You're late. I know. I'm sorry. You're not sorry till I say you are. Get to dishes, and don't mess up the dishwasher again. Eric nodded and headed to the back. Landon followed him, pretending to grab a broom. As soon as they were out of earshot, he spoke low. You okay? Yeah, you sure? Eric glanced over his shoulder. I just need the hours. I can handle it. Landon didn't push. He swept around trash cans while Eric started rinsing pans piled from the night before. The water ran brown for a long time. The shift started slow. A handful of regulars came in: construction workers, a nurse with headphones, 2 women in suits who didn't look up from their phones. Olivia worked the register. Landon stayed on lobby duty, wiping down tables and keeping restrooms stocked. By 9, the pace picked up. The line stretched to the door. Curtis moved behind the espresso machine, calling out drinks with no rhythm, confusing Olivia more than helping. At one point, he tossed a cup toward the trash when he misread a sticker. Double shot, no whip, whoops, guess someone's getting a surprise today. Olivia flinched. That's not funny. Relax. You think these people can actually tell the difference? Landon watched a man in a wheelchair roll up to the register. Olivia took his order, just a black coffee and a warmed muffin. She handed it to him gently, and he nodded in thanks. As he turned to wheel himself toward a table, one of the cafe chairs was in the way. Curtis, standing nearby, didn't move. After a beat, Landon stepped forward and pulled the chair aside. The man nodded again. Appreciate it. Curtis finally glanced over. Maybe next time order it to go. Landon froze. Olivia looked up sharply. You don't have to say stuff like that, she said. Curtis shrugged. I'm just saying we're not exactly built for wheelchairs in here. It's a public space, Landon said, careful with his tone. He's allowed to sit wherever he wants. Curtis stared at him. You got a problem, Kyle? No, just saying. Curtis didn't respond. He went back to the machine, knocking over a cup without noticing. After the rush, Landon took the chance to speak to Olivia while they reloaded cup sleeves under the counter. Is it always like this? What, the chaos or the attitude? Both, she hesitated. It depends on the day. But yeah, pretty much. Why stay? She glanced at the register. I need the paycheck. I'm trying to get into nursing school. Flexible hours matter. A customer approached. Conversation over. By noon, the heat in the kitchen had built up. The AC vent above the espresso station rattled but didn't blow. Curtis had taken his break in the office. Door shut. Music leaking through. Landon leaned into the back and found Eric rinsing trays with his sleeves rolled up and sweat beading on his forehead. You've been back here all morning? Yeah, Curtis doesn't let me do front of house anymore. Said I look tired. Landon blinked. What does that mean? I dunno. Just that I'm not presentable. He said customers don't like seeing people who look like they haven't slept. Landon's jaw clenched. That's not okay, Eric shrugged. I used to do register sometimes, but he moved me off it 2 weeks ago. Landon looked at the kid. Pale, yes. Thin, maybe. But neat, alert, respectful. You ever report that? He asked. To who? Curtis signs the schedule. If I say anything, I lose hours. Landon nodded slowly. You've got every right to be treated fairly here. Eric gave a tired smile. Thanks. But I just need to keep this job right now. Curtis came out of the office 5 minutes later holding his phone. Kyle, you're up. Go cover register. Olivia's taking her break. Landon stepped behind the counter, nodding at Olivia as she walked off. The register was straightforward. He'd designed the system himself, years ago with a software partner. But now, standing there, ringing up orders as Kyle, he saw things he'd never considered. The clunky menu flow. The upcharge prompts that confused customers. The fact that most of the pastries weren't labeled correctly. A middle-aged man in a polo came up, glancing at the display. "What's in that croissant?" Landon tapped the screen. "Butter, flour, eggs, and a little almond paste." Almond. "I'm allergic." He quickly offered another option, checking twice before confirming. "Appreciate it," the man said. "No problem." Curtis walked past, muttering, "You don't need to give them an ingredient list. Just sell the food." Landon didn't respond. An hour later, Olivia returned with her bag over her shoulder. "Curtis said I'm cut early," she said. "Even though I'm scheduled till 3. Landon blinked. "You okay with that?" "No," she said plainly, "but he says we're over budget." "So he sends the highest paid people home first." Landon knew the pay scale. Olivia made barely above minimum. Curtis made triple that. After she left, Curtis leaned against the back counter watching Landon reload napkins. "You're not bad, Kyle. You learn fast." "Thanks. Just don't start thinking you know better than me. You've been here 2 days. I've been running this place for 3 years. Landon nodded. "Understood." That afternoon, a woman in a headscarf came in and asked if a certain sandwich was halal. Curtis answered before Landon could step in. "It's chicken. You'll live." The woman blinked, said nothing, and left. Landon set down the tongs he was holding. "Was that necessary?" Curtis turned. "You gonna police my customer service now?" "Yes," Landon said calmly. "I think I am." Curtis stepped closer. "You don't talk to me like that. You want to keep this job." Their eyes locked. Landon took a breath. "I'll finish the shift." Curtis squinted. "Whatever, just remember who's in charge." Landon nodded and walked back to the sink. He'd seen enough. The allergy lie, the disrespect, the discrimination. Tomorrow he was coming back, but not as Kyle. Landon arrived just after sunrise, this time in a pressed navy button-down and clean jeans. No wig, no glasses, no disguise. A Café-branded windbreaker hung over his arm. He'd never worn one before. Those were for regional visits and photo ops, but today, it felt appropriate. He parked his car 2 blocks away and walked the rest, passing the same cracked pavement and faded chalkboard signs he'd seen the last 2 mornings. Inside, the café was already half lit. Olivia was at the register, tapping something into the POS system. Eric was restocking lids with slow, careful movements. Curtis stood near the pastry case with a cup in hand, talking loudly into his phone. Landon pushed open the door. The bell rang. Curtis didn't even glance up. "Yeah, corporate wants us to cut waste but won't give us usable inventory reports, so I'm just doing what I have to. No, I don't care. I'll talk to whoever." He took another sip, still mid-call, and finally looked toward the door. At first his eyes skimmed over Landon, not recognizing him without the disguise. Then his gaze snapped back. The color drained from his face. Landon walked past the register, nodded once at Olivia, and stopped in front of Curtis, who now held his phone frozen midair. "You can hang up," Landon said. "We're going to have a different conversation." Curtis fumbled with his phone and ended the call without a word. Olivia's eyes widened. Eric paused mid-stack. The air shifted. Curtis started. "Yes," Landon said. "I own this company. My name is Landon James. You've worked here for over 3 years and somehow never saw fit to meet me. I've been Kyle for the last 2 days, and I've seen enough." Curtis opened his mouth, but Landon raised a hand. "Don't speak. Just follow me." He led him toward the back hallway, stopping short of the office. The door was ajar. The stale smell of instant noodles and fabric softener lingered. Landon turned. "You lied to a customer with a dairy allergy. You pressured a cashier to participate. You insulted a man in a wheelchair. You mocked another customer's religion. Then you limited employee shifts based on your own pay structure, not performance metrics. You also kept expired inventory behind the building and told employees to sell it anyway." Curtis swallowed hard. Look, I didn't know, I said don't speak. Landon's voice was even, not raised, not loud, but iron solid. You are relieved of your position, effective immediately. You will not re-enter this store. You will not contact any employees. Your final paycheck will be direct deposited. HR will follow up about your conduct and outstanding reports. Curtis stood frozen, face pale and unreadable. Leave. Now. Curtis hesitated, then turned and walked out, brushing past Eric without a glance. The front door opened and shut behind him. Silence settled behind the counter. Landon exhaled quietly and stepped back into the cafe. Olivia stood still, hands at her sides. He walked up to her. I'm sorry you were put in that position. She looked at him carefully. Why did you come here like that? As Kyle? Because the reports I was getting didn't add up. And I didn't trust hearing it secondhand anymore. Eric walked forward, drying his hands on a towel. So all that time you were watching us? I was working with you, Landon said, and trying to understand what's really going on in my company. What I saw here won't happen again. He looked around the cafe. A couple of customers were trickling in. The first wave of the morning rush was about to begin. There's no manager on duty now, Olivia said softly. I'm aware. That's why I'm staying, she blinked. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do, until I can get someone in who deserves this position. He walked to the back, found a spare apron, and tied it on. Eric, he said, coming back out, you're working both front and back. That's not sustainable. I'm going to take over dishes for the next few hours so you can rotate. Olivia, you'll stay on register, but I'll help run drinks. They nodded. Landon moved quickly, organizing the station, checking the espresso machine for calibration, noting how low the prep fridge was on certain items. The syrup shelf still had expired product. He pulled it all and dumped it. By 8, the cafe was humming. Landon steamed milk, checking temperatures with practiced precision, and handed off cups without delay. He noticed Olivia's posture had changed, more upright, more responsive. She greeted each customer clearly, made eye contact, and stopped flinching every time someone asked a question. Eric rotated to the front, wiping tables with quiet focus. Landon caught him answering a customer's question about ingredients with confidence, even double-checking the allergen chart. The customer thanked him and sat down. At 9, Landon stepped aside to take a call from his operations director, Melinda. I need an interim manager at Café 14 ASAP, he said. Curtis is gone. I'll explain later. Send someone who knows policy and treats people right. I'll reroute Julia from store 6, Melinda replied. She's solid, but she'll need a few hours. Good, I'll cover until she arrives. He hung up and returned to the bar. Olivia handed him a sticky note with a name. That's the woman with the dairy allergy. She's a regular, comes Tuesdays and Thursdays. I wrote her name down from the loyalty program. Maybe you want to reach out. I do, Landon said. She hesitated. Are we safe now? I mean, is this going to change? Landon looked at her serious. It already has. By 11, he stepped into the office to call HR and file a formal misconduct report. He included the specific comments Curtis made, the falsified product usage, and the scheduling manipulation. He didn't sugarcoat. When he came back out, Olivia and Eric had fallen into a rhythm. They worked quieter now, more fluidly. But the tension that had hung in the air the last 2 days was gone. Customers lingered longer. The music, which had been off before, now played softly through the speakers. Just past noon, Julia arrived. Mid-30s, sharp blazer, cafe name tag already clipped. She shook Landon's hand firmly and got to work without needing a tour. Landon stepped back, watching her check in with Olivia, review the shift log, and begin inspecting the prep fridge. He waited until there was a lull, then called Olivia and Eric to the back. You both deserve better, he said, and I'm going to make sure you get it. They stayed silent, listening. Olivia, I'm promoting you to training supervisor. You'll work with Julia to onboard new staff across 3 locations. I've already bumped your pay and added benefits. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. Eric, you're being moved to a hybrid role, front of house and back with a mentor assigned. Your hours are protected. If anyone tries to cut them without cause, they'll deal with me." He handed them each a typed letter, signed and dated. They looked down at the papers, then back up. Eric nodded slowly. Olivia blinked a few times, then finally asked, "Why us?" "Because you did the right thing even when no one was watching," Landon said. "And that's what this place is supposed to be built on." Neither of them said anything for a long moment. Then Olivia folded her letter and tucked it into her apron. "I never thought anyone up top actually cared." "Then it's time we changed that," Landon said. He stepped out into the sunlight a few minutes before one, apron folded under his arm. His hands smelled like espresso and sanitizer. It was the most honest work he'd done in months. He didn't look back. There were 17 other stores to visit. By the following Monday, Landon was seated in the downtown office conference room across from his executive team. No cameras, no assistants. Just a whiteboard, a stack of printed reports, and the quiet scrape of his pen as he underlined a section on an employee survey. He hadn't called the meeting to explain what had happened at Store 14. The time for explanations was over. This was about action. He looked up. From now on, no store manager will operate without quarterly in-person evaluations by someone outside their immediate reporting line. Starting with Café 14. "Julia's interim, but she needs backup. We're giving her that." Melinda, his operations director, nodded. "Already got someone from HR shadowing her for the next 2 weeks. Training's underway." "Good," Landon said. "We're also revising the allergen policy. It's not enough to have a chart in the backroom. Every employee needs clear, standardized responses for dietary questions, no improvising, no assumptions. We'll roll out the training this quarter." One of the regional leads, Marcus, raised a brow. "What about stores that don't have the staff to cover those training sessions?" Landon looked at him. "Then we adjust schedules to make it happen. If we can't find an hour to keep our customers safe, we shouldn't be serving food." There was no argument. He stood, walked to the whiteboard, and wrote 2 words in capital letters: Employee Signal. "Starting next month, we're launching an internal reporting platform, anonymous, secure, and reviewed weekly by HR and a senior exec. Not a hotline that gets routed to voicemail. A real system. If someone's being disrespected, ignored, or pushed out unfairly, they'll have a direct line." Melinda folded her arms. "That's going to rattle a few store managers." "Let it," Landon capped the marker. "If anyone's afraid of accountability, they can leave now." By the time the meeting ended, there were 6 pages of documented changes. Not ideas, not proposals. Decisions. Later that afternoon, Landon walked into Store 6. Julia was finishing up a team huddle near the prep area. The café was calmer than last week's chaos, organized but busy. Olivia stood beside Julia, clipboard in hand. Eric was behind the bar, working the espresso station with quiet focus. Landon pulled Julia aside. "How's staffing?" he asked. "We're still short one, but we're managing. I've got a candidate lined up for trial tomorrow. Olivia's been a huge help. She's already flagged a few inconsistencies in the training docs, and we're cleaning those up." He nodded. "What about the customer side?" "Feedback's been positive. We've had 3 regulars say they noticed the difference. One woman said, 'It finally feels like someone's listening.' That stuck with me." Landon turned, watching Olivia explaining something to a new hire near the register. Her tone was clear, confident. Her hands moved with precision, demonstrating how to label a drink correctly. He walked over and waited until she finished. "You've settled in fast," he said. She smiled slightly. "I didn't know how much of this I already had in me. I just never had the space to use it. You created that space. We just got out of your way." She glanced toward the espresso bar. "Eric's different too. Not louder, just steadier." Landon followed her gaze. Eric was wiping down the counter, nodding at a customer who thanked him for a drink. There was no tension in his shoulders now. Julia crossed over and joined them. "Quick heads up," she said. Eric flagged something about the inventory system. Apparently, the syrup auto reorder is still calibrated to Curtis's old model. It's sending low-quality product. "I'll escalate it," Landon said. Thanks for catching that. Julia handed him a folder. Also, he's been tracking customer drink remakes voluntarily. Says it helps him learn where errors happen. He made this. Inside was a handwritten log of every remake he'd done over the past 5 days, what went wrong, how he fixed it, and what he learned. Landon closed the folder. Let's sit down with him before I go. They waited until the rush slowed, then invited Eric to the back break room. He looked nervous at first but relaxed as Julia slid the folder in front of him. We saw what you've been tracking, she said. That kind of initiative isn't common, especially not from someone still getting their footing. Eric glanced at Landon. I just figured, if I'm going to do this, I should do it right. You're already doing more than that, Landon said. We'd like to offer you a structured development path. You'll rotate across 3 locations over the next 6 months: front of house, back of house, even some inventory work. If you're still interested after that, there's room for an assistant manager role. Eric blinked. Wait, really? Yes, Julia said, but it comes with expectations. Punctuality, consistency, and you keep asking questions. Deal? Eric nodded, slow but certain. Yeah, deal. After he left, Landon remained seated. Curtis never mentioned this kid's name once in his reports, he said. I believe it, Julia replied. But the staff already trusts him. He doesn't push, he just shows up and people notice that. Landon stood. That's who we build around. On his drive home, he took a detour and stopped by a small print shop near the warehouse district. Inside, he handed over a USB drive and waited by the counter while the technician printed a large laminated poster. He rolled it up and drove straight to store 14. Julia was still there, finishing paperwork. I want this posted near the break room, Landon said, handing her the rolled poster. She unrolled it. At the top, in bold black letters, it read, This place runs on people, not fear. Beneath that, if you're being ignored, mistreated, or told to do something you know is wrong, speak. You will be heard, you will be protected. And if you're part of the problem, you won't be here long. Landon looked around the cafe. The lighting was softer now. The music was better balanced. There was a chalkboard near the pickup counter where customers had started writing thank you notes. One said, Thanks for making my coffee right and treating me right, he turned to Julia. We're not just fixing a store, we're setting a new bar, she nodded. Then we're just getting started. He left the cafe without needing to look back this time. The company wasn't perfect, it never would be. But it was moving in the right direction, one store, one voice, one decision at a time. And now he was wide awake.